Change your mindset, and your life shifts instantly. You are not trapped, just unaware of your power. The present moment is your doorway. Let go of old stories, worn-out beliefs, and illusions of control. Clarity is freedom. Begin now, not later. Your reality responds not to effort, but to awareness. This is not merely a poetic phrase. It is the very foundation of how your world unfolds before you. What you call reality is not some fixed, objective structure standing separate from you. It is a living reflection of how you interpret it. The mind, quietly and ceaselessly, translates raw experience into meaning, and it is through this translation, through this lens, that life becomes what it is to you. Two people can walk through the same forest. One sees a place of mystery, wonder, and harmony. The other, danger, darkness, and inconvenience. The trees haven't changed. The air is the same. But the meaning, the experience, the reality is utterly different. This shows you that perception isn't a passive mirror. It is an active projector. The mind does not simply record the world, it shapes it. So what happens when that lens is clouded by fear? What happens when it is cracked by doubt, or fogged by a lifetime of inherited beliefs? You don't just see a distorted world, you live in one. You begin to expect difficulty, so you attract resistance. You look for betrayal, so you interpret kindness as manipulation. The world seems cruel, not because it is, but because that is what your lens permits you to see. This is why transformation doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness. Most people try to change their lives by rearranging the furniture of the world outside. New jobs, new locations, new relationships. But they carry the same lens, the same tired beliefs. And so, they find themselves trapped in different versions of the same story, like changing masks, but not the face beneath them. If you want to change your life, change the way you see. The mind is not a container, it is a creator. Every thought you entertain, every belief you nurture, is like a brush stroke on the canvas of your experience. What you believe about yourself, about others, about what is possible, these are not quiet, idle assumptions. They are the scaffolding of your world. Some will say, but the world is hard, people are selfish, suffering is everywhere. And perhaps it is so, but look deeper. Where did this belief arise? From observation or from repetition? Is it truth, or is it the result of years of living through a narrow lens, absorbing the fears and limits of others? Reality bends in strange and subtle ways when perception shifts. A problem becomes a lesson. A failure becomes a redirection. Loneliness becomes solitude. Even endings become beginnings when the lens widens. And this shift doesn't require years. It only requires presence. A moment of quiet honesty with yourself. A willingness to ask, is the way I see the world helping me or hurting me? Your mind has been conditioned not just by your past, but by how you've chosen to interpret that past. You may think your pain defines you, but it is only the meaning you've assigned to it that has held it in place. You are not your memories. You are not your wounds. You are the awareness that sees all of it. And once you realize this, you're free to see differently, to perceive anew. Changing the lens doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means seeing the full picture, not just the shadows, but the light too. Not just what is lacking, but what is growing. It is the difference between seeing a storm and seeing the renewal it brings, between seeing loss and seeing what space it creates for something else to emerge. Life is not happening to you, it is responding to you. Not to your surface wants, but to your deeper beliefs. And when you shift those beliefs, the world echoes the change. Not because magic happens, but because your behavior, your energy, your openness, everything begins to align with a new perception. And people respond. Opportunities emerge. The same world becomes a different experience. And so the journey is not outward, it is inward. The path is not paved with effort, but with clarity. The more aware you become of how you see, the more free you are to choose how you live. The lens is in your hands, even now. Clean it, question it, expand it. It may feel, at times, like a trap. You sit with your thoughts, and they race, tumble, argue, and judge. You try to quiet them, but they grow louder. You search for peace, and instead find unrest. It's easy to believe the mind is your enemy, that it confines you, limits you, works against your desires. But this is a misunderstanding, not of the mind, but of your relationship to it. The mind is not a cage that confines, it is a garden waiting to be cultivated. And like any garden, it responds to what you plant, how you nurture, and whether you care for it with intention or neglect. Seeds of thought fall into it every day. Some seeds you choose. Others are carried in by the winds of experience, memory, and the voices of those who came before you. Left untended, weeds grow. Doubts spread. Fears multiply. The garden becomes overrun with what was never consciously planted. But here is the beauty of it. You are not just the one walking through this garden, you are the gardener. To live unconsciously is to mistake every thought for truth, every fear for fact, every passing cloud for the entire sky. But once you begin to see that your thoughts are not commands but possibilities, not cages but seeds, you gain a kind of freedom that isn't loud or forceful, it's quiet, patient, and deeply powerful. You begin to ask, what am I watering? What am I allowing to take root? It's easy to focus only on the weeds, the regrets, the insecurities, the old echoes of failure. They seem to demand your attention, but even those began as seeds, planted once, maybe long ago, and fed by repetition, by belief, by emotion. The person told you that you were not enough. Perhaps you believed them. That belief took root, and every time you replayed that voice, it grew. Now it might seem like a wall inside you, but it's only a plant, and any plant can be pulled if you stop feeding it. Gardens are not perfect places. They are wild, unpredictable, and always changing. Sometimes what you plant does not bloom. Sometimes it withers. But every act of planting, every act of conscious thought, loving attention, or self-reflection is an act of participation in your own becoming. You are not trapped in your mind. You are not at war with it. You are in dialogue with it. The world does not need you to have a mind full of thorns. It needs your inner garden to be alive with peace, with clarity, with strength. That strength doesn't come from resisting your thoughts, but from witnessing them with gentleness. To see clearly without running, without clinging. The more you allow yourself to be aware, the more you recognize that your inner world grows from what you cultivate daily, not from what has happened to you, but from how you choose to meet it. A garden does not bloom overnight. You may spend days where the soil looks bare, where nothing seems to grow. But growth is happening beneath the surface. Your mind is learning to breathe again. It is remembering how to soften. Even your silence is part of the process. Some of the greatest shifts occur in the moments when nothing seems to be happening. And just as a gardener learns the language of the seasons, you must learn the rhythm of your own mind. There are times to plant new beliefs, times to prune old ones, times to rest, times to bloom. If you rush it, force it, judge it, you trample on the very thing you're trying to grow. Patience is not just a virtue here. It is a necessity. You must let your mind unfold, not pressure it into blooming. The mind is alive. It adapts. It can be hurt, but it can also heal. What you feed it becomes part of who you are. Feed it beauty, feed it stillness, feed it truth. That doesn't mean pretending everything is lovely when it isn't. It means choosing to return again and again to what is real, what is grounded, what nourishes. You are not broken. You are growing. And everything in you that feels like a cage may simply be a part of the garden that hasn't been tended yet. Not wrong, not ruined, just waiting. This truth hides in plain sight, overlooked because it seems too simple. We speak of tomorrow as if it's promised, as if it waits obediently just beyond the edge of the clock. We postpone change, delay decisions, hold off on healing, all in service of an idea called later. But later is not a place. It is not a time that exists. It is a comforting illusion we use to protect ourselves from the discomfort of now. Now is all that ever truly exists. Every experience you've ever had occurred in the present moment. Even your memories are revisited now. Your hopes for the future arise now. The mind plays tricks, imagining past and future as separate destinations, but every moment of your life unfolds only in the now. Time, as we understand it, is a measurement of change, but experience itself happens here, in this breath, in this beat of the heart. And yet, we wait. We wait to speak our truth. We wait to start the work that matters. We wait to forgive. We wait to live, as if the right time will come when the stars align and our fears evaporate. But the truth is, the right time never comes because it is already here. Waiting does not bring clarity. Action does. Presence does. There is no magical arrival point. You do not become ready, and then you begin. And that is how you become ready. The fear of now is understandable. It's raw. It's real. The present moment does not allow you to hide in projections or justifications. It asks for your full attention, your full responsibility. It asks you to let go of the safety net of later and step into what is. That can be frightening, but it is also freeing, because when you stop waiting, you stop being a victim of time. Look at how much life has been delayed because of later. How many dreams were shelved, not because they were impossible, but because their owners believed they had more time. But time doesn't belong to you. It moves with or without your permission. The only thing you ever truly possess is now. Even healing happens now, not tomorrow, not when things are easier, not when someone else changes. Healing begins in the instant you stop resisting what is and allow yourself to be fully present with it. Change is not some distant shore. It is the very current of life flowing through you. Every shift, every awakening, every decision that matters starts in the stillness of now. To live in the now is not to abandon planning or forsake responsibility. It is to realize that your power does not reside in some imagined future, but in your capacity to engage with what is real right here. What you do now echoes into every moment that follows. What you choose to believe now builds the architecture of your future. Now is uncomfortable because it is honest. It reflects everything as it is not as you wish it to be. But in that honesty is the seed of transformation. You cannot change what you will not face, and you cannot face anything if you keep putting it off until later. The present is not small or fleeting. It is infinite in depth. Within this moment lies everything you've ever needed. Clarity, direction, peace. They do not come from the ticking of hours. They come from presence, from noticing the breath, from observing the thought without judgment, from choosing not to escape into distraction. You do not need more time. You need more awareness. Now is sacred, not because it is dramatic, but because it is alive. Later is imaginary, built out of thought and fear, but now it breathes, it moves. It offers itself to you endlessly, asking only for your attention. The path you long to walk, the life you long to live, begins not with more preparation, but with deeper presence. And when you understand this, truly feel it, you stop waiting. You speak when silence becomes too heavy. You act not because the conditions are perfect, but because you realize they never will be. You love while you can. You forgive while you're alive. You become who you were always meant to be, not one day, not eventually, but now. Wishing is passive. It is a longing cast into the distance, a quiet whisper that hopes the wind will carry it somewhere meaningful. But belief is active. It shapes your perception, your decisions, and the way you carry yourself in the world. Belief is the soil from which your reality grows. What you believe about yourself and the world silently governs your thoughts, your choices, and the very direction of your life. Many people live their lives full of wishes. They wish to be confident, successful, loved, at peace. They close their eyes and imagine a better version of themselves somewhere down the road. But then they open their eyes and walk back into the same patterns, the same doubts, the same small story they've been telling themselves for years. The wish might be strong, but if the belief underneath it says, "I'm not enough," then no amount of wishing will transform that reality. The mind cannot manifest what the heart does not truly accept. You might say you want to change, to rise above your current life, to break free from what binds you. But what do you truly believe about yourself? Do you believe you're capable of more? Or do you carry the quiet assumption that you'll always fall short? You become what you believe, not what you pretend to believe. The mind responds to what's planted deeply, not what's whispered lightly. Belief is not simply a thought you repeat, it's a foundation you stand on. It reveals itself in how you act when no one is watching. It speaks through the tone you use with yourself. It shows up in the risks you take or don't take. It lives in the decisions you make when faced with uncertainty. If you believe you're unworthy, you may reject opportunities before they even reach your hands. If you believe you're strong, you'll walk toward the unknown with steady feet. Belief doesn't just change what you see, it changes what you're willing to reach for. And belief is not always loud. It often whispers in the background of your mind, unnoticed but deeply influential. That's why reflection matters. You must become aware of what stories you've inherited or constructed. Somewhere along the way, someone may have told you that you weren't smart enough, attractive enough, worthy enough. Maybe no one said it, but you interpreted a moment of rejection or failure as proof, and that belief took root. It doesn't matter how many times you say you want success if, underneath it all, you believe you're destined to be overlooked. But just as beliefs are formed, they can be reformed. They are not fixed. You can unlearn what limits you. You can challenge the silent assumptions that keep you small. You can speak to yourself in a new language, one that affirms rather than diminishes. This does not mean deluding yourself. It means recognizing the truth of your potential, a truth that has always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. You are not here to live a life dictated by fear masquerading as logic. You are here to uncover the power that belief holds not as fantasy, but as a force that moves mountains quietly, one step at a time. When you believe something deeply, your behavior aligns. You begin to make different choices, walk with different energy, speak with more authority. Others notice it too. The world reflects what you believe not because it conspires to please you, but because your beliefs guide the lens through which you experience it. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about anchoring yourself in a deeper truth that you are allowed to change, to grow, to rise, that you are not bound by what you used to believe. A new belief is a new path. You do not need anyone's permission to start walking it. You simply need to stop feeding the old ones that kept you stuck. So stop merely wishing. Begin observing what you truly believe. Question it. Challenge it. Replace it where needed. Because life does not respond to what you hope, it responds to what you expect, what you prepare for, what you act upon. You do not become what you wish. You become what you believe. And that belief, if chosen with clarity and courage, will shape everything that follows. We often meet resistance and treat it like an enemy, a barrier standing between us and what we want. We label it as a problem to overcome, an obstacle to bulldoze through. But resistance is far more revealing than it is obstructive. It does not arise to stop you. It arises to show you. It reflects back what lies within, what you fear, what you suppress, what you are not yet willing to face. When you resist doing something, the natural reaction is to blame the task itself. You say it's boring, too hard, badly timed, or unimportant. But if you pause long enough to look beneath the surface, You'll often find the discomfort is not in the task, it's in what the task reveals about you. Resistance is rarely about the thing itself. It's about the beliefs and emotions that the thing touches. It's about your relationship with effort, with uncertainty, with failure, with exposure. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. What you see may not always be what you want to see, but the mirror itself is not the enemy. It simply reflects. That is what resistance does. It reflects your doubts, your limits, your hidden desires. It reflects the stories you tell yourself about what is too much, too far, too soon. It reveals your edges, and in those edges lies the opportunity to grow not by force, but by awareness. Many people run from resistance. They find ways around it. They stay busy. They change paths just when the tension builds. They convince themselves that a different goal would be easier, more natural. But what they're really running from is not the resistance, it's what it's showing them. To confront resistance is to confront yourself. It is to look into the mirror and see not just the parts you're proud of, but the ones you've neglected, denied, or feared. The moment you feel resistance is the moment you stand on the threshold of transformation. It means something matters. It means something is at stake. Resistance often appears strongest just before a breakthrough, not because you're weak, but because you're close to discovering a part of yourself that was previously hidden. And what is hidden cannot be healed or integrated until it is seen. Think of how resistance shows up when you're about to express a truth, start a new path, or leave something that no longer serves you. The tension builds. You feel doubt, hesitation, even fear. But those emotions aren't just signals to stop, they are invitations to look deeper. What do you believe about your worth, your voice, your ability to change? Resistance asks these questions, not with words, but with the tightness in your chest, the urge to delay, the sudden distractions that pull you away. And when you stop and observe this instead of pushing it aside, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. You see the old conditioning, the past wounds, the inherited fears. You see that much of what you resist has nothing to do with the present moment and everything to do with what you've carried from before. The mirror does not lie. It simply waits for you to look without flinching. The most powerful shifts happen when you stop resisting your resistance, when you stop fighting it as if it were a force outside of you, when you start treating it like a teacher rather than a threat. In this way, resistance becomes a guide. It shows you where you still hold back. It shows you where your growth lies. And if you're brave enough to look into that mirror, to really see what's there, something changes. Not all at once, not always with ease, but deeply and permanently. You don't overcome resistance by pretending it's not there. You don't crush it with discipline or silence it with willpower. You understand it. You listen to it. You ask what it's trying to show you about yourself. And in that listening, you soften. You become less at war with your own process. You realize that resistance doesn't block your path, it illuminates it. So next time you feel resistance rising, pause. Ask yourself what it's mirroring back to you. Look at it, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What fear is speaking? What truth is being hidden? What part of you is waiting to be claimed? For when resistance appears, it is not to stop you, it is to reflect you. And in that reflection lies your next becoming. Control is the illusion that if you manage every variable, predict every outcome, and tighten your grip on the steering wheel of life, you will find peace. But life is not something to be dominated. It is not a machine that bends to will alone. It is a living rhythm, constantly shifting, flowing, unfolding. The more you try to force it into a narrow lane, the more it resists you, and the more frustrated you become, mistaking resistance for failure rather than a sign that you are moving against the current of your own nature. Control stems from fear. The fear of uncertainty, of pain, of not getting what you want. And so you reach, clutch, demand, manipulate. You draw maps for a territory that has never been traveled. You try to cage a wind that was never meant to be held. The need to control arises when you do not trust, when you don't trust yourself, the world, or the deeper intelligence guiding the unfolding of your life. Clarity, however, is not about grasping, it is about seeing. It does not resist life's movement, but observes it. It asks not how to dominate the waves, but how to understand the tide. Clarity brings awareness. It illuminates what matters, what doesn't, what is real, and what is merely noise. With clarity, you no longer act from desperation or panic. You move from knowing. When you seek clarity, you begin by listening. You listen to yourself, not the layers of noise and narrative, but the still, quiet truth that sits beneath it all. You ask, what is actually happening right now? What am I avoiding? What am I chasing, and why? Clarity doesn't require you to have all the answers. It simply asks you to be honest about the questions. It does not demand certainty, it calls for presence. Many people chase control because they believe it will bring freedom. They build systems, schedules, routines, trying to keep every part of life perfectly ordered. But true freedom does not come from control. It comes from understanding. If you understand who you are, what you value, what your path is, then you don't need to hold life in a chokehold. You trust your direction. You become grounded, not because everything is certain, but because you are clear on what matters most. Without clarity, you are easily distracted. You confuse urgency with importance. You say yes to things that pull you away from yourself. You resist change because you're unclear about what you're actually holding on to. You fear loss, even when what you cling to no longer serves you. But with clarity, choices become simpler. You are no longer overwhelmed by options. You begin to act from alignment, not impulse. To seek clarity means you must be willing to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. This can be uncomfortable. You might uncover that some of your efforts have been misdirected, that some of your goals are inherited rather than chosen. But that discomfort is the beginning of transformation. Clarity peels back the layers. It asks you to sit with what is, rather than constantly reaching for what could be. You don't need to control the future if you're clear in the present. The path unfolds one step at a time, and each step becomes meaningful when it's taken with awareness. Control asks, how do I make this go my way? Clarity asks, what is the way? And often, the answers come not through thinking harder, but through becoming still, letting the dust settle, letting the noise quiet down so that what's essential can rise to the surface. Control is rooted in ego, the need to conquer, to define, to possess. Clarity is rooted in humility, the willingness to see, to learn, to adjust. It is not passive. It is profoundly active, but it acts with insight, not anxiety. It acts with intention, not obsession. When you let go of control, you begin to notice what was always there, the subtle guidance of your intuition, the signals your body gives you, the quiet knowing that comes when you stop grasping. Life does not require you to hold the reins tightly. It invites you to walk with it, to co-create with it, to trust that clarity will give you what control never could: inner alignment, peace, and direction. To truly change your life, let go of the need to control every outcome. Instead, seek clarity. In clarity, you'll find the strength to act, the wisdom to wait, and the vision to walk a path that feels like truth. We live our lives carrying narratives stitched together by memory, repetition, and the voices of others. These stories form early. They come from childhood experiences, cultural norms, past failures, fleeting praise, and quiet moments no one else noticed. Over time, they solidify. I'm not good enough. People always leave. Success is for others. These become the background music of our thoughts, so familiar, we don't question their rhythm. But what if that music, that old story, is no longer the song you need to hear? The mind clings to what is known, even if what is known causes pain. There is safety in repetition, a strange comfort in the familiar ache. But growth demands discomfort, not the chaotic discomfort of self-destruction, but the quiet unease of stepping into what is not yet written. And for that to happen, the old story must be allowed to die, not violently, not with shame, but with clarity. It must be seen for what it is, a past that no longer fits the person you are becoming. The stories you carry are not always true. They may have once served a purpose, offering protection or identity when you felt lost. But growth does not happen by holding on to outdated versions of yourself. It begins when you recognize that you are not the narrative, you are the author, and the page is still blank. Dying to the old story is not a single act. It is a practice. It is waking up to your automatic thoughts and asking, is this still true? Is this voice in my head my own? Or did it come from someone who never truly saw me? Growth begins when you stop arguing for your limitations, when you stop reciting the lines of a script that no longer serves your evolution. The old story may tell you that you are broken, unworthy, or doomed to repeat the past. But those words are echoes, not prophecy. They hold no real power unless you feed them with belief. When you stop feeding them, when you pause, breathe, and say, that story is over, a new space opens. In that space, something sacred stirs. Possibility, direction, change. Not because you force it, but because you've made room for it. To grow is to let go of identity as a fixed point. You are not meant to be a statue, admired but unmoving. You are meant to shift, to question, to dissolve one form so that another may rise. People often fear this because it feels like death, and in some ways it is. The death of familiarity, of certainty, of who you thought you were. But death is not the end. It is a transition. The soil must accept the fallen leaf before the seed can bloom. There are moments when the story falls apart, suddenly a breakup, a loss, a failure. But more often, it unravels slowly, like old thread gently pulled loose. A belief you once held tightly begins to lose its grip. A pattern you kept repeating now feels too small, and something deeper within you begins to whisper, it's time. Time to stop pretending. Time to stop performing. Time to meet yourself where you are, not where you've been. This meeting with the self is not always grand. Sometimes it happens in stillness, in silence, in the subtle moment when you choose truth over comfort, when you say no to what you used to accept, when you allow yourself to want more not from greed, but from alignment. That is the heartbeat of growth. Not louder, faster, stronger, but clearer, truer, freer. The old story may try to pull you back. It will tempt you with guilt, nostalgia, and doubt. It will say, who are you without me? And you must answer not with defiance, but with knowing, I am becoming. Growth is not about erasing the past. It is about no longer being bound by it. It is honoring the chapter that brought you here, then turning the page with courage, because you were not born to repeat your story. You were born to evolve beyond it. When the old story dies, the light gets in. Not all at once, but enough to guide your next step, and then the next, and the next, until one day you look back and realize the story that once defined you is now only a memory, a lesson, a marker of how far you've come. Growth does not begin in striving. It begins in surrender, and it begins the moment you let the old story fall silent, so that your real voice can speak. Freedom is not something granted by permission, nor is it something you chase across years or through achievements. It is not a reward reserved for those who check the right boxes or meet some external standard. True freedom lies in the mind. It is the silent, constant presence beneath all of your thoughts, roles, and beliefs. It is already there. But to live from that freedom, you must be willing to question the very foundation upon which your world is built. Most people do not feel free because they are trapped not by walls or chains, but by assumptions. assumptions about who they are, what is possible, what is allowed. These assumptions go unnoticed because they have become so familiar. They disguise themselves as truth. But what if they are not truth? What if they are merely habits of thought, repeated so often that you forgot you had a choice? The mind clings to certainty because uncertainty feels like danger. So you think in familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve you. You repeat the same emotional responses, tell the same internal stories, accept the same limitations, and you call this reality. But it is not reality, it is interpretation. The world does not imprison you. The mind that refuses to question itself does. To think differently is not to become someone else. It is to strip away everything that is not truly you. It is to recognize that much of what you believe about yourself was never your belief to begin with. It was inherited, absorbed, and reinforced by repetition. And like a dream you mistook for waking life, it can seem so convincing that you forget to wake up. Thinking differently is not simply adopting a new opinion. It is seeing through the illusion of certainty. It is looking at your life, your reactions, your desires, your fears, and asking, is this mine? Is this true? Who told me it had to be this way? And when the answers are unclear, you do not panic. You remain open. Because openness is the first breath of freedom. You are already free because freedom is not earned, it is remembered. Beneath every conditioned belief is the silent awareness that has always watched without judgment. The part of you that notices your thoughts is not bound by them. The part of you that sees fear is not itself afraid. That part, the witness, is your freedom. But to live from it, you must dare to let go of the comfort that comes from believing your thoughts are absolute. To dare to think differently is to interrupt the script. When the mind says, "This is how I've always been," you ask, "But must I remain this way?" When fear says, "You will fail if you try," you say, "Let me fail and see what is revealed." When guilt says, "You owe it to them to shrink," you answer, "I owe it to myself to grow." This rebellion is quiet. It does not shout. But it is relentless, and it begins the moment you choose to question rather than obey. People fear thinking differently because they believe it will isolate them. But the opposite is often true. When you begin to think from your own center rather than the crowd's rhythm, you discover others who are doing the same. Not those who agree with every word you say, but those who value truth over comfort. And in that meeting of minds, something powerful happens. Connection without conformity, unity without sameness. But the first step is solitary. You must sit with your own mind. Watch it. Watch how it judges, how it clings, how it reacts. Not to fix it, but to know it. Because what you know, you no longer fear. And what you no longer fear, you can transcend. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the labels you've worn or the roles you've played. You are the one who noticed it all, the one who has been there through every change, and that one is free. It always was. But to live from that place, you must unlearn the belief that freedom comes from outside. You must dare to see through the veil. No one can do it for you. But the moment you begin, something subtle shifts. Not because the world changes, but because you see it differently. And in that shift, you realize the truth. Your prison was made of thought, and your key was always within reach. Freedom has never been something to earn, chase, or wait for. It has always been yours, quietly waiting beneath the noise of inherited beliefs and unquestioned thoughts. To live it, you must dare to think differently, to challenge the mental scripts that bind you, and to choose awareness over habit. When you begin to question, to observe, and to trust that inner witness, the illusion of limitation fades, and in its place, clarity emerges. You are not becoming free, you are remembering that you already are. All that's left is to step into that truth, fully, courageously, and now.
Choosing yourself first is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-realization. To choose yourself is to understand that you are the foundation upon which your life is built. It's about recognizing that you cannot give to others what you do not possess within yourself. Like a tree that must first root itself deeply in the earth to grow and bear fruit, you too must nourish and ground yourself to contribute meaningfully to the world. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to how much we give, how often we sacrifice, and how tirelessly we please others. But this belief is rooted in a misunderstanding of balance and reciprocity. If you empty yourself completely in service to others, what remains of you? Choosing yourself is not about neglecting others. It is about ensuring that what you offer comes from a place of abundance, not depletion. It is about tending to your own garden so that its beauty and fruitfulness can inspire and nourish others. To choose yourself is to embrace the truth of your being. It requires you to listen closely to the whispers of your soul, the quiet yearnings that remind you of what brings you joy, peace, and purpose. It's about honoring those desires, not as indulgences, but as essential pieces of your identity. When you deny yourself, you deny the world the unique expression of life that you are. Your dreams, your passions, and your needs are not distractions from life, they are life itself. Choosing yourself first often means facing the discomfort of setting boundaries. It may mean saying no to people you love or walking away from situations that no longer serve you. This is not easy. It requires courage to disappoint others, to be misunderstood, and to stand firm in your truth. But this discomfort is temporary, while the peace and freedom that come from honoring yourself are enduring. When you choose yourself, you teach others how to treat you, and you create space for relationships and opportunities that align with your true self. The illusion of selflessness is one of the most profound paradoxes we encounter in life. We are often taught that the pinnacle of virtue lies in the complete surrender of ourselves to the needs and desires of others, that to give endlessly is the ultimate expression of love and care. But this ideal, while noble in appearance, carries with it a subtle and often overlooked deception. For how can one truly give authentically and abundantly if one is hollowed out, depleted, or disconnected from the self? The very act of giving presupposes that there is something within us to give. Yet we often neglect this truth, sacrificing our own well-being in the name of a misguided sense of duty. To understand the illusion of selflessness, we must first examine the nature of self. The self is not a rigid, isolated entity, but a fluid, interconnected part of the larger tapestry of existence. When we give without regard for our own needs, we disrupt this balance, creating a dynamic that is neither sustainable nor authentic. True selflessness cannot exist without self-care, for it is in nurturing our own well-being that we cultivate the energy and resources to support others. The illusion lies in believing that we must erase ourselves to serve others, when in reality our presence and vitality are what enable us to give meaningfully. The illusion also stems from a misunderstanding of what it means to be generous. Generosity is not measured by the extent of our sacrifice, but by the depth of our intention. To give with an open heart requires a sense of wholeness, a recognition that we are enough as we are. When we give from a place of depletion, our offerings carry the weight of obligation and resentment, even if unspoken. But when we give from a place of fullness, our contributions become acts of joy, flowing naturally and freely without expectation of return. Another facet of this illusion is the way it perpetuates the cycle of dependence and imbalance. When we prioritize others to the exclusion of ourselves, we inadvertently teach them to rely on us in ways that may hinder their own growth and independence. In trying to be everything to everyone, we deprive them of the opportunity to discover their own strength and resilience. True support lies not in doing for others what they can do for themselves, but in walking alongside them, empowered and whole, as they navigate their own journeys. The illusion of selflessness also reveals itself in the societal pressures that glorify martyrdom and self-sacrifice. We are often celebrated for putting others first, yet this praise can become a double-edged sword, encouraging us to neglect our own needs in pursuit of external validation. But this path is unsustainable, for a well that is constantly drawn from without being replenished will eventually run dry. To give truly, we must first learn to receive rest, love, and care from ourselves and from others. Ultimately, the illusion of selfless is not about denying the importance of giving, but about redefining its nature. True giving arises from a place of balance, where the self is neither abandoned nor overinflated, but understood as an integral part of the whole. In recognizing and tending to our own needs, we honor the interconnectedness of all life. For just as a tree must nourish its roots to bear fruit, we too must nurture ourselves to contribute meaningfully to the world. In dispelling the illusion of selflessness, we discover the profound truth that caring for ourselves is not in opposition to caring for others. It is the very foundation of it. The nature of inner alignment is not a destination to be reached or a goal to be accomplished. It is a state of harmony, a dance between the many facets of who we are. It is the recognition that within us exists a vast and intricate symphony, composed of our thoughts, feelings, desires, and actions, all seeking to move in concert. Yet in the rush and noise of modern life, we often find ourselves out of tune, our inner voices clashing like discordant notes. Inner alignment, then, is not something to be imposed or forced. It is something to be rediscovered, a natural state of being that arises when we allow ourselves to listen deeply and live authentically. To understand inner alignment, we must first acknowledge the fragmentation that often exists within us. We are taught to wear masks, to conform to expectations, to suppress parts of ourselves that do not fit neatly into the roles we have been assigned. Over time, this disconnection becomes so ingrained that we lose sight of who we truly are. We begin to live from the outside in, letting external circumstances dictate our inner reality rather than allowing our inner truth to shape the world around us. Inner alignment calls us back to ourselves, asking us to shed these layers of pretense and reconnect with the essence of who we are. This alignment is not about achieving perfection or eliminating conflict. Life is inherently dynamic, filled with change and complexity. Inner alignment does not demand that we silence the tensions within us, but that we embrace them as part of the whole. Just as a river flows not in spite of the rocks in its path, but because of them, our journey toward alignment is shaped by the challenges and contradictions we face. It is through this process of integration, of accepting and harmonizing the disparate parts of ourselves, that we find our center. At its core, inner alignment is about living in accordance with our values. It is the state in which what we believe, what we feel, and what we do are in harmony. When our actions are out of sync with our beliefs, we experience discomfort, a sense of being unmoored. This misalignment manifests as stress, dissatisfaction, or a vague feeling that something is off, but when we take the time to reflect on what truly matters to us and align our lives accordingly, we begin to experience a profound sense of peace and purpose. It is not that the external world becomes easier or less chaotic, but that we become more grounded, more resilient in the face of it. Inner alignment also requires us to trust ourselves. This trust is not blind faith, but a deep knowing that arises from self-awareness. To align with our inner nature, we must first become intimately acquainted with it. This means sitting with our thoughts, exploring our emotions, and listening to the quiet wisdom that resides within. It is not always comfortable to look inward, for we may uncover fears, doubts, or desires that we have long ignored. But this self-knowledge is the foundation of alignment. For how can we live authentically if we do not know who we are? Moreover, inner alignment is not something that can be achieved through force or willpower. It is not a matter of disciplining ourselves into submission, but of surrendering to the flow of life. Just as a musician does not create harmony by rigidly controlling each note, but by feeling the rhythm and responding to it, we too must learn to move with the natural cadence of our being. Inner alignment is less about doing and more about being, about allowing ourselves to inhabit the present moment fully and without resistance. Ultimately, the nature of inner alignment is a reminder that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply connected with it. When we align with our inner truth, we align with the greater truth of existence. We begin to see that the same harmony we seek within ourselves is mirrored in the patterns of the universe and the cycles of nature, the movements of the stars, and the ebb and flow of the tides. Inner alignment is not just about personal well-being. It is a way of being that resonates outward, creating ripples of balance and harmony in the world around us. The ripple effect of self-priority is a profound phenomenon that begins not with outward action, but with an inward shift. It is the subtle yet powerful transformation that occurs when we recognize the necessity of placing our own well-being, joy, and authenticity at the center of our lives. To prioritize oneself is not an act of exclusion, but a declaration of wholeness. For when we nurture the self, we naturally extend that nourishment to the world around us. And like a stone dropped into a still pond, the choice to honor and care for ourselves sends ripples outward, touching everything and everyone in its path. To understand this effect, we must first acknowledge the interconnected nature of existence. We are not isolated beings. Standing apart from the world, we are threads in the vast tapestry of life, woven into the fabric of every relationship, every interaction, and every environment we inhabit. When we prioritize ourselves, our health, our boundaries, our passions, we strengthen the thread that is ours, making the entire weave more resilient. Conversely, when we neglect ourselves, the thread frays, and the interconnected whole is weakened. This is the paradox. By caring for ourselves, we care for the world. The ripple effect begins with energy. When we are drained, overburdened, or disconnected from our truth, we move through life with a heaviness that influences those around us. Our exhaustion becomes a silent signal, a message that life is something to endure rather than celebrate. But when we prioritize self-care, we radiate a different energy, one of vitality, presence, and joy. This energy is contagious, inspiring others to consider their own needs and desires. It is not through words or demands that we encourage others to value themselves, but through the quiet power of example. Self-priority also cultivates clarity. And this clarity becomes another ripple in the pond. When we honor our needs, we begin to see more clearly what aligns with our values and what does not. This clarity allows us to engage in relationships and pursuits that truly resonate with us, and in doing so, we model authenticity for others. We teach not through instruction, but through embodiment, that it is possible to live a life that feels true and fulfilling. This authenticity invites others to examine their own lives, to question whether they are living in alignment with their inner selves or simply following the expectations of others. Another ripple emerges in the realm of boundaries. When we prioritize ourselves, we learn to set boundaries that protect our energy and well-being. These boundaries are not walls to keep others out, but bridges that create healthier, more respectful connections. By asserting our limits, we invite others to do the same, fostering a culture of mutual respect and understanding. In this way, self-priority becomes a force for stronger, more equitable relationships, where each individual is valued not for their sacrifices, but for their authenticity. The ripple effect also touches the larger systems and structures we are part of. A world in which individuals prioritize their well-being is a world that values balance, sustainability, and fairness. When we choose ourselves, we challenge the narratives that glorify overwork, self-neglect, and martyrdom. We create a countercurrent to the relentless pace of modern life, reminding ourselves and others that life is not a race, but a journey to be savored. This shift may seem small on an individual level, but like the ripples in the pond, it accumulates, growing larger and more impactful with each person who chooses to live in alignment with their truth. Ultimately, the ripple effect of self-priority is a testament to the power of being. It shows us that our greatest contribution to the world is not what we do, but who we are. By prioritizing ourselves, we do not diminish our ability to give, we enhance it. We become more present, more joyful, and more connected, and these qualities radiate outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully see or understand. In choosing ourselves, we choose to honor the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing that when one thread is strengthened, the entire tapestry is enriched. The courage to disappoint is perhaps one of the most difficult yet liberating virtues we can cultivate. It is an act of defiance against the deeply ingrained fear of rejection, a quiet rebellion against the societal conditioning that tells us our worth is tied to how well we meet the expectations of others. To disappoint someone is not a failure, it is a declaration of self-respect, a recognition that the path to authenticity often requires stepping away from the approval of the crowd. It takes courage because it means embracing the uncomfortable truth that we cannot be everything to everyone, nor should we try to be. To disappoint is to acknowledge that life is not a performance. We are not here to play a role to fit neatly into the narratives that others have written for us. And yet from an early age we are taught to seek validation, to shape ourselves according to the desires of those around us. We learn to say yes when we mean no, to smile when we feel sorrow, to bend ourselves into shapes that do not fit the contours of our true selves. And this way of being may win us temporary favor, but it comes at a great cost, a slow erosion of our authenticity, a growing distance from our inner truth. The courage to disappoint is not about recklessness or disregard for others. It is not an excuse to be unkind or selfish. Rather, it is an act of alignment, a decision to honor our own needs, values, and boundaries, even when doing so may cause others to feel let down. This courage arises from the understanding that disappointment is not a reflection of our worth, but a natural consequence of living honestly. When we choose to prioritize our well-being, we are not rejecting others, we are simply choosing not to reject ourselves. This courage is rooted in the awareness that pleasing everyone is an impossible task. The world is full of conflicting expectations, and no matter how hard we try, we will always fall short in someone's eyes. To live in fear of disappointing others is to live in a state of perpetual compromise, forever molding ourselves to fit a shifting and unattainable standard. But when we let go of the need to be universally liked, we free ourselves to be fully present, fully real. We stop chasing approval and start living with intention, guided by what truly matters to us. The act of disappointing others often brings with it an unexpected gift clarity. In the space created by saying no, we gain a deeper understanding of our priorities and values. We begin to see which relationships and commitments nourish us and which drain us. This clarity allows us to make choices that align with our authentic selves, choices that bring us closer to a life of meaning and fulfillment. And in doing so, we give others permission to do the same, to step away from the expectations that no longer serve them and to embrace the freedom of being true to themselves. Disappointing others also teaches us about resilience, both our own and that of those we let down. It is easy to underestimate the strength of others, to assume that our choices will irreparably harm them. But disappointment, like all emotions, is a fleeting experience, one that arises and fades in its own time. By allowing others to feel disappointment, we give them the opportunity to grow, to confront their own attachments and expectations. In this way, our courage to disappoint can be a gift, not only to ourselves, but to those around us. Ultimately, the courage to disappoint is a reflection of the deeper courage to live authentically. It is a willingness to embrace the messiness of life, to stand firm in the face of disapproval, and to trust that our worth is not dependent on external validation. It is a reminder that our lives are our own, not a stage for the fulfillment of others' expectations. And in choosing to disappoint, we find the freedom to be who we are unapologetically and wholeheartedly. For in the end, the greatest disappointment would be to look back on our lives and realize that we never truly lived. The power of authenticity is a force that arises from the simple yet profound act of being true to oneself. It is not something to be achieved or acquired, for it is already within us, waiting to be unveiled. To be authentic is to strip away the masks we wear, the roles we play, and the expectations we try to meet, revealing the essence of who we truly are. It is to step into the world not as a polished or perfected version of ourselves, but as we are flawed, vulnerable, and beautifully human. Authenticity is not a destination, but a way of being. It requires us to embrace the paradoxes within ourselves, to see that we are both strong and fragile, wise and uncertain, light and shadow. To be authentic is to live in harmony with these contradictions, to understand that they are not opposites to be resolved, but aspects of a whole to be embraced. In doing so, we move beyond the dualities of right and wrong, or good and bad, stepping into a space of acceptance that frees us from the tyranny of self-judgment. The power of authenticity lies in its ability to connect us not only to ourselves but to others. When we show up as our true selves, we create an opening for genuine connection. We no longer seek to impress or persuade. Instead, we invite others into a shared space of honesty and vulnerability. This connection is not based on pretense or performance, but on mutual recognition, a silent acknowledgement that we are all navigating the complexities of life in our own way. Authenticity then becomes a bridge to solving the barriers that separate us and reminding us of our shared humanity. To live authentically is also to embrace freedom, the freedom to live according to our own values, rather than those imposed upon us by society or others. This freedom can be unsettling, for it requires us to take full responsibility for our choices and actions. There is no script to follow, no external authority to guide us. Yet in this freedom lies profound empowerment, for it allows us to craft a life that is uniquely our own. Authenticity does not promise an easy path, but it offers one that is deeply fulfilling, one in which we are no longer divided within ourselves. The path to authenticity is not without its challenges. It demands courage, the courage to face our fears, to confront the parts of ourselves we would rather hide, and to risk rejection or misunderstanding. But this courage is not about being fearless, it is about moving forward despite our fears, trusting that the rewards of authenticity far outweigh its costs. And it is a journey of peeling back the layers of conditioning, of unlearning what we have been taught about who we should be and rediscovering who we are. Authenticity also requires self-awareness. To be authentic, we must first know ourselves not as we wish to be, but as we are. This means looking inward with curiosity and compassion, exploring our desires, our values, and our pain. It means listening to the quiet voice within that often gets drowned out by the noise of the world. Self-awareness is not a static state, but an ongoing practice, a continual return to the truth of our being. The power of authenticity extends beyond the personal. It has a transformative effect on the world around us. When we live authentically, we inspire others to do the same. We become a source of permission, showing that it is not only possible but deeply worthwhile to live in alignment with one's true self. This ripple effect can shift relationships, communities, and even cultures as authenticity becomes a catalyst for deeper understanding and greater compassion. Ultimately, authenticity is a reminder of our interconnectedness. To be authentic is not to stand apart, but to stand fully present in the world, offering ourselves as we are and inviting others to do the same. It is a return to simplicity, a reclaiming of the essence that has always been within us. In choosing authenticity, we choose to live fully, to engage with life not as an abstract idea, but as an immediate, vibrant reality. And in doing so, we discover that the power of authenticity is not about what we do, but about who we are, a power that has been with us all along. Choosing yourself as a practice is not a singular event, but an ongoing journey, a rhythm that weaves through the fabric of daily life. It is not a decision made once and for all, but a series of choices, moment by moment, to align with the truth of who you are. This practice is not about self-indulgence or ego. It is about authenticity, about living in harmony with your inner nature and recognizing that the greatest gift you can offer the world is the fullness of your being. To choose yourself is to break free from the illusion that your worth is determined by others. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval, to measure our value by external standards, and to fit neatly into the molds created by society. But choosing yourself is an act of rebellion against this conditioning. It is the quiet but powerful realization that you are enough as you are, without the need for validation or permission. This recognition is not a static state, but a practice, a deliberate and conscious effort to return to your center, again and again. This practice requires awareness. It begins with the willingness to listen to yourself, to hear